My name is Daniel. I am 40 years old, and I need to tell you about a promise I made when I was 12. I made it on a quiet night, lying in a dark bedroom, staring at the ceiling. I promised myself I would never become like my father. At 12, promises feel simple. Right and wrong feel clear. You think you understand everything. I believed I would grow up and become a different kind of man. A softer man, a kinder father. But life has a way of shaping you slowly, quietly, in ways you do not notice. And one day, many years later, I looked in the mirror and saw his face staring back at me. Not exactly, but enough to scare me. A hard man. My father was not cruel. That is important to say. He never hit me. He never abandoned us. He worked every day. He paid the bills. He came home on time. But he was hard. His footsteps were heavy. His voice was loud. His silence was even louder. When he entered a room, the air changed. You sat straighter. You spoke carefully. You measured your words. I do not remember him laughing often. I do not remember him kneeling down to look into my eyes. I remember instructions, corrections, expectations. When I brought home good grades, he said, "Next time, aim higher." When I scored a goal in football, he said, "You missed 2 chances." When I made a mistake, he said, "What is wrong with you?" But nothing was ever enough. Slowly, I stopped trying to impress him. I started trying not to disappoint him. There is a difference. The bicycle //1. Memory never left me. I was 12. I was trying to fix my bicycle in the yard. The chain had fallen off. My hands were dirty. The metal was greasy. The sun was hot. I felt frustrated. I felt stupid. My father came outside. He stood over me and watched in silence. I hoped he would kneel down. I hoped he would say, "Let me show you." Instead, he said, "Stop crying and fix it properly." I had not even realized tears were on my face. He turned and walked back inside. I stayed there alone, trying to figure it out. That night, I lay in bed and whispered to myself, "When I have a son, I will help him." That was the first promise. Growing apart. As I grew older, I spoke less, not because I had nothing to say, but because I learned my words were often corrected. When I was 17, I told my father I wanted to study art. I loved drawing. I loved creating. It made me feel alive. He looked at me as if I had embarrassed him. "Art?" he repeated. "That's not practical. Be serious." That was the end of that dream. I chose business instead. I told myself it did not matter. But something inside me quietly closed that day. When I left for university, our conversations were short and formal. At the door, suitcase in hand, ready to leave home, he said only one thing: "Do not embarrass this family." Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "I will miss you." Just that. I nodded and left. Too late. When I was 28, my father died suddenly from a heart attack. There were no final conversations, no apologies, no explanations, no softening. At his funeral, people said, "Your father was a strong man. He loved you very much." I wanted to believe them, but love that is never spoken feels like silence. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, anger and grief mixed inside me, and I whispered, "I will be different." Becoming a father. When my son Leo was born, I was 32. I held him in my arms and cried. He was tiny. His fingers wrapped around mine. His breathing was soft and uneven. I looked at him and said quietly, You will never be afraid of me. For the first few years, I kept that promise easily. I read bedtime stories. I built toy towers. I let him climb onto my shoulders. When he fell, I picked him up. When he cried, I listened. I felt proud. I thought I had escaped my father's shadow. But shadows do not disappear. They wait. Life became busy. Work became demanding. Deadlines, bills, meetings, long drives, less sleep, less patience. Leo grew older. He asked more questions. He made more noise. He made more mistakes. Small things began to irritate me. Spilled juice, broken toys, careless homework. One evening, he knocked over a glass of water. "I'm sorry, Daddy." Without thinking, I snapped. "Why can't you be more careful?" The words were sharp. Too sharp. Leo's face changed. He did not cry. He just became quiet. That silence felt familiar, but instead of apologizing, I said, "Go get a towel." That night, I lay awake. But the next day I forgot. And it happened again. Not screaming. Not violence. Just coldness. Just impatience. Just that tone, the same tone I grew up hearing. The moment of truth. When Leo was 8, he brought home a drawing from school. "Daddy, look." It was a picture of our family. Stick figures. Bright colors. Big smiles. But I was drawn differently. Bigger, with thick eyebrows and a straight line for a mouth. "Why do I look like that?" I asked gently. Leo shrugged. "You look like that when you're working. Busy. Distant." The same words people used for my father. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The tight jaw, the heavy expression, the distance in my eyes. I saw him, and something inside me cracked. That night, I stood outside Leo's bedroom and listened to him breathing. Soft, peaceful, unaware. I remembered myself at his age. The bicycle, the yard, the silence. And for the first time, I wondered something new. Maybe my father had been tired too. Maybe he had been afraid. Maybe he believed strength meant silence. Maybe no one had ever shown him another way. It did not excuse the pain, but it explained it. And suddenly, I felt something unexpected. Compassion, breaking the cycle. The next morning, Leo spilled milk at breakfast. He froze again, watching my face carefully. Time slowed down. I felt the old reaction rising. Irritation, sharp words. But I also felt 12-year-old Daniel in the yard with his broken bicycle. I took a breath. "It's okay," I said quietly. "Let's clean it together." Leo blinked. Then he smiled, small and relieved. Something inside me softened. That week, I bought Leo a bicycle. Not because he asked, because I needed to do something I never received. We stood in the driveway. I held the back of the seat. I ran beside him. I knelt when he fell. "It's okay," I said each time. "Try again." When the chain came off, I knelt beside him. "Let me show you." My hands next to his, small fingers learning beside larger ones. It was not about the bicycle. It was about everything I never received and everything I could finally give. I realized something important. I was not just teaching Leo. I was healing the 12-year-old boy who once sat alone in a yard, waiting for help that never came. Breaking a cycle is not dramatic. There is no music, no applause. It is quiet. It is choosing patience when anger feels easier. It is saying, "I'm sorry," even when your pride resists. And I have said sorry many times. More than my father ever did. Each apology heals something small. Not just in Leo. In me, the promise rewritten. Last week, Leo brought home another drawing. This time, my mouth curved upward. Not a big smile. But real. You look happier, he said. I am trying, I answered. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror again. I still saw my father in my face. The same jawline, the same eyes, but I also saw something he never had. Awareness, choice, change. I once promised I would never become like him. And in some ways, I broke that promise. The anger was there. The impatience was there. The coldness tried to take root. But maybe the real promise is not about being perfect. Maybe it is about stopping when you notice. Maybe it is about healing what you inherited. I cannot erase the past, but I can soften the future for my son, for myself, for the 12-year-old boy who once lay awake and promised to be different. This time, I intend to keep it.